Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Polyhedron and Claddercast, episode 139. I'm Steve Tudor.
Oh, I'm Andy Lewis.
I'm Sid Gill.
And I'm not Steve's brother. I'm Rory Summers.
Where did that come from? I mean, it's pretty obvious, but...
Did you say this, right? I think you're just being gingerist.
Yeah, because you're all the same. Yes, we are.
You're all clones. You're like bananas.
like bananas.
Like bananas. Okay. That is not... Yeah, we went and played a game we mentioned earlier, and somebody we were playing with goes, "Are you two brothers?" It's like... Okay. Yeah. It was genuine. It wasn't like oh, you two look like you could be brothers. It was a genuine thought that we were brothers. However, I also had the same week I was away with work somewhere, and someone at the site I was with looked at me and goes, "You aren't related to such and such." "No, I've never heard of him." "You're the spitting image of him. Can I have a selfie?" What?
Celebrity you've never heard of, or just some like bloke down the pub?
Just some bloke down the pub.
Oh, nice.
His mate down the pub. To the point where this guy even phoned his mate just to make sure I wasn't the same person that my phone was ringing.
Wow.
Just make sure you're not in two places at once. Nice.
Yeah. So yeah, that was weird. I must have just the most generic of faces, unfortunately, which I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. It means I can probably get away with a few crimes, but it just means I'm not going to stand out, am I?
There is that.
Yeah.
Sure, there might be some other bonuses. Odd that your mind immediately sprung to committing crimes. It says more about you, Steve, than anything else.
Well, as you two could be brothers, Steve could commit the crime and Rory get lifted for it, so it's okay.
Yeah.
Closest I have for a lookalike is when I was younger and slightly thinner than I am today. I get told I look like Alistair McGowan, a comedian.
I'd argue you look more like Alistair McGowan now.
Really?
Oh yeah, baldy head, mate. Yeah. Have you seen him recently? He doesn't now.
Does he know?
I don't think so. But I'm sure I'll be corrected on that. I'm fairly sure he doesn't.
Okay. Well, it happens to the best of us, doesn't it, mate?
Well, just ahead of the game, mate.
I'm filthy gingers around us with a full head of hair.
Trend setting, mate. That's what I'm doing. Trend setting.
Aye.
Speaking of going away, right? I had to go away at short notice this week.
All right.
All right.
Does the work do?
It was yes. But whilst I was away, things happened in my house.
Oh, aye.
Not good things.
Was it surreptitious events?
So, gentlemen, remind me, what month is it?
I believe it's November as we record this podcast.
Right, yes, November, indeed. Mm-hmm. I returned to the Christmas tree in my living room.
Oh, dear. That's...
Less than 4 minutes in, there's the first F-bomb.
I think this is a justified F-bomb, if I'm honest. It's November. It's November.
Yeah.
I need to do a special F-bomb rouse around the air horn. It needs like jingle bells.
Do you know what?
Definitely.
The best bit of this, right, is I thought I was safe because Mrs. G doesn't like going in the loft. So I'm thinking, I'm all right. She's been nagging me. She's been nagging me. She's been nagging me for weeks to go and get this stupid Christmas tree out of the loft. And I've been going, no, I'm too busy. I can't go up there today. It's too late. The boy's asleep, right? She sent the boy. Like some sort of little chimney sweep. Off he went up the loft. He had to bring the Christmas tree down.
Oh God!
I tell you,
Yes.
it's unbelievable. Genuinely unbelievable.
I have noticed this year there's a lot of people doing like Christmas in November now. I've heard tunes. Obviously the supermarkets have been selling it since August.
Well, Halloween finished.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Before Halloween, actually. Sainsbury's was selling Christmas stuff before Halloween, which I thought was a bit, too far. But, I mean, there's a lot of folks setting stuff up now, and it's still November. Has 2023 been that shit? We want it over already.
Yeah.
It's gone quick. I'll admit that. But
Somebody brought mince pies into the office, and the use-by date on the mince pies was 13th of December. Shows you how early they'd made.
I mean, I'll admit
outrageous.
that is about the only good thing to come out of this Christmas
it's brandishing a mince pie now. Is that an iced mince pie?
No, it's just like a fancy M&S.
Oh, it's just a light.
It's an M&S job.
It's okay.
It's not that abomination that she offered me last night. Just like a mince pie, right? and they've taken the top off the mince pie, so it's not a pie anymore, right?
It's a pie
tart.
lie.
It's a tart case.
Tart.
It's a tart case,
Or
right?
flan.
Yeah. And then
Quiche.
to make things worse, Mr. M&S, right, has gone and then dumped Nutella on top of this mince pie, right?
Ooh.
And then hazelnuts.
Ooh.
Why would you do that to a mince pie?
Oh, I'm not going to lie, that sounds actually all right.
Oh, you can get.
It sounds brilliant.
I knew I'd find nobody here that would give me any support.
I
for
can't
that.
stand mince pies.
I could probably trump that for weirdness. Is Alora spent Sunday making mince pies, so homegrown ones, and spent about 5 hours in the kitchen, arguing with Alexa on the timer, because every time she tried to set a timer, the timer would start in here in the lounge rather than the one in the kitchen. So the timer would go off in here. She couldn't hear it, so mince pies started burning. But when she makes mince pies, she kind of buys about 4 different, jars of supermarket mincemeat, mixes them all together, which is quite nice. But then, rather bizarrely, and this I think is her mother's recipe, she puts in on the top of you put the mincemeat in, and just a thin layer on the top of the mincemeat before you put the lid on. Philadelphia cream cheese.
What?
It sounds weird. It does.
No,
it sounds
awful.
disgusting.
Why
but
would you ruin a mince pie like that?
It works. It's actually really good.
To be fair, I've tried Alora's mince pies and they're good.
See?
And that's the second. That is the second F-bomb. That is worth having.
It is.
also
They are
justified.
very good, because she brought in about kind of the seconds, the ones that I'm allowed to eat before she gives the rest away to the good people. I get the dregs. Just like
misfit
I'm like what's
the
this
broken
called?
biscuits.
I'm the clown that lives in the drain from it. I'm kind of fed on scraps and sewage. So she brings this tub of mince pies in. I smashed about 6 of them last night. They're really good. But yeah, cream cheese in mince pies. Who knew?
Right. Well, to help distract me, boys. Come on. What have you all been playing?
Sid, now, cream cheese mince pies are a very middle class thing, aren't they? You've been talking about M&S mince pies. It's also a very middle class
Very
thing.
middle class thing. Yeah.
This
absolutely.
segues about as smooth as a controlled demolition,
So-
isn't it? Jesus.
I mean, is that the segue into a class system based book? Oh my god.
Yeah, it
Go
is.
put your
Yes,
teeth in.
yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, yeah.
it is.
Class
It would
system
be if you could say it
is
properly.
there. I can't even. Now you're making it worse.
Let's talk about hegemony, boys.
Cut to the chase. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so me and Rory played Hegemony a few weeks back.
Finally.
So you guys had played it
At
was it
length.
Tabletop Scotland.
Tabletop Scotland.
Yes.
Well, yeah, I think that's the first point I'm going to make. How long did it take you to play a game? Full 4-player game.
7 hours.
8-9 hours.
8-9
A
hours.
fortnight. I don't know.
It was a long time.
It took us 5.5 hours.
Yeah.
Okay. Was it a full 4-player?
Full player.
Full 4-player.
Okay, wow.
And we'd all read the rules beforehand,
Ish.
although I have my doubts that one person maybe hadn't quite read them as much as the other 3. But we'd all read the rules beforehand, so we kind of went straight into it. Although we'd have to poke at a couple of rules and double check things as you went, because
First time
a
playing it,
complicated
yeah.
beast. Yeah, it's a complicated beast. So for those that didn't listen to the podcast previously, we mentioned it. Hegemony is a Eurogit style game based on having 4 classes effectively, and each player has a different class. So it's lower class, middle class, capitalist class, and then one other player plays the government,
Yes.
which is trying to keep all the other councils, all the other classes in check.
Which is like herding a particularly voracious shower of cats.
Yes. And it does work in that kind of basic system. So the capitalist class wants to build companies and make profit from those companies. The lower class, working class, wants to get all their people into jobs and improve their life with healthcare and university and things like that.
And iPads.
And iPads, yes, and technology. And then the middle class is kind of balancing between the two. They want to get people into jobs, but they also want to own little boutique shops and make their own little business because they're own little capitalists. And then balancing all that is the government, whose job is basically just to try and help whoever's in last place effectively, because they get points for giving bonuses to people, and they want to keep everyone roughly even. So whoever's doing crap generally tends to help them. Now, what this means is everyone's game works differently. There's some rules that cross over between players, but generally each player is working completely differently. And as we've alluded to, it ends up being quite a long game. And I don't quite know why, because it doesn't feel that long when you're playing it.
No.
It's only because we looked at the clock and went, Christ, because we went and played it at Epic LAN.
Epic LAN, yeah.
So we played it at a tabletop gaming convention, just like yourselves, and we were playing it on the Sunday, and they shut the doors at 4 p.m. on the Sunday, and we were playing until like 1 minute to 4, basically.
Yeah.
They were taking down the tables as we were finally
doing the end game scoring.
Scores. Yeah. So we cut it fine, shall we say. Now, I must admit, we did cut out about 15, 20 minutes from the end of the game, because one of the things that the government can do is if they screw up too much, the International Monetary Fund come in.
I'm aware of their work.
Yeah, they intervened in our game. I think twice.
Yeah. Well,
No, just once.
Was it just once?
Just once. They threatened the second time.
They intervened only once in our game, but it was just at the very end of the game.
Yeah.
So you have these elections at the end of potentially end of each round. We just removed all the elections because they came in and just struck off all the ballot papers and set what the government policies they wanted.
No, you're not allowed to vote. You're too stupid, too poor.
So it's a really interesting game because of this dynamic between these 4 completely different kind of goals, but at the same time each one needs the other. Like the capitalist class needs work.
Yeah, there's a lot of symbiosis in this game, and it's really, really clever.
And there's also markets, because there's different things you're buying and selling. There's food, there's technology, there's education, there's health.
Yeah.
And the price of these are kind of set by the players. There's some international markets which can be tweaked by the players' actions. And then the upper class, the capitalist class and the middle class can actually set the price at which they want to sell these items for, which means the other players are kind of balancing what they can buy it. It's very fascinating, and as I think you mentioned last time, Andy, there's like a textbook involved, isn't there?
There is, yes. There are.
book of
I think it's
papers,
3. It's basically homework you get. There's literally a book. I was going to say booklet, but it's more like a book of, I think it's 3 academic papers or studies or treatises or whatever word you want to use, theses. I think the designer of the game has been a co-author of all 3 of these things, so it's obviously where it came from. And they're all sort of socio-political theory, socio-economic theory, and another one. I haven't read them. I've skimmed them, but not read them in their entirety, because I suspect I have better things to do with my life. But
They're really
I'm sure
good.
it's probably very interesting.
They are really good.
Yeah.
If you want to understand economics and the push and pull of why there's a class system, they are a really good read. I have now read some of them.
Yeah, from what I understand of it, it's actually those booklets also cover essentially the gamification of those theories.
Yeah.
So it's not just about the theories, it's how those theories were then implemented in the game, which I think is a really interesting discussion on game design and how carefully and cleverly you can interlink board game mechanics to your theme, in this case, socioeconomics. I thought this was an absolute belting game.
It's an absolutely fantastic game.
I'm glad you think so.
Itching to play it again.
Yeah, me
the
too.
thing I enjoyed about it the most, and having spoken to people about it afterwards, is there's this, when you say it's like a 5-hour plus game to people, they have this automatic fear that it's going to be very complicated. But what I loved about it is you can explain every rule using very real world terms.
Yeah.
Everything makes sense. As soon as you start thinking about why this thing does X, you go, oh, of course it does. It makes sense. Why would this rule not be any other way? Mm. And I thought that was absolutely fantastic. It made it it was a very grounding experience playing the game.
Mm. It is. It's a really, really good, I would say simplification, but model of our society. And also the game mechanics themselves are actually, turn to turn, are really simple. It is literally play a card.
Yeah.
Now, that card can have a significant number of ramifications, but it is literally play a card on your turn. So it could just be take 20 quid from the bank, or it could be up just cause massive financial upheaval for the other three players. It could be anything, and it's really, really clever. And I think the biggest part of the learning experience I got from the game was it's knowing when to play those cards is the hard bit. Timing in that game is absolutely everything.
It is absolutely key timing. And I think the other thing you've got to remember is you've got to separate your own personal views from the faction that you're playing.
That's very true.
And I think that is actually, I saw you doing it you had a good challenge with yourself of the government policy sometimes. And it almost pains you. Yeah. It almost pains you to do a particular thing, even though it was the right thing for your faction. Well, no, but you had to help somebody. I mean, otherwise the government collapses. I mean, hence the IMF coming in.
You're right.
But what I think I saw with you is that there was definitely, you didn't want to do certain things because they struck the wrong chord with you personally. But the game, in order to play the game, you had to kind of balance and make that call. It's a bloody clever thing.
And you say that, I went into my role just straight away.
You were middle class.
You were upper class.
I was capitalist class.
I told you.
The government had effectively already sold me the BBC, so I controlled the BBC effectively, which means I had so much influence that everyone was trying to increase the wages, increase the minimum wage, and every time they did, I just flooded the media with votes.
For me, that's what makes Hegemony such a really great game, is the fact that I've come away from that game, although I don't remember turn to turn the specifics, I came away, we told a story, we had a narrative to that game that I think I'm probably going to remember for a very, very long time, because it did evolve this system, that the fact that Steve was sold the broadcasting network and how that influenced the game. It was a key moment in that game. It created a story, and I'd wager that every game of Hegemony will tell its own story, which will be memorable for its own reasons.
Yep.
I agree.
I mean, and we've said it before that, sometimes games don't need a theme, or the theme is so pissed in it might as well not be there. I'd argue that this game absolutely gets it right. It's the theme. It pervades through everything you're doing in the game, and it makes the game better. It adds value to the game rather
100%.
than just
You couldn't reskin that at all.
No. The theme and the mechanics are just so well intertwined. You could not pick them apart. It's like a good cardigan. Once you pick it apart, the whole thing just unravels.
He claims he's not upper class. Cardigan wearing Lewis.
Oh, let's not open the cardigan. Let's not open that can of worms, please. I went round to Steve's house the other day wearing a cardigan, and Steve and Amanda immediately just started ripping the piss into me.
No. It started a minor domestic because Amanda was like, "Look at that cardigan, Stephen. That's a nice cardigan.
Oh,
why won't you wear a cardigan?
No.
I don't like cardigans. I'm a jumper and a hoodie man. No. Why couldn't you wear a nice cardigan? That's a very nice cardigan Rory's got."
I do have to admit, for many years now, I have been looking for a Christmas cardigan, and I cannot find one. So instead, I've so far settled for a Christmas tank top.
The irony of the man who hates Christmas wants to wear a Christmas tank top.
Oh, it's ironic, mate. You should see how bad my Christmas tank top is. It's terrible.
I had to judge a Christmas jumper competition last year, which I felt...
That sounds like a really disappointing competition.
It was. I mean, to be fair, some people did wear some jumpers that were Christmassy themed. I couldn't give two I'm not going to lie to you. I just picked someone.
And the old hooter is going to be busy this week, Steve.
So I don't know how we managed to get onto Christmas jumpers, but we were talking about Hegemony a minute ago.
We're talking about you and your cardigan, mate.
We're talking about me and my cardigan. That's how we done it. Yeah, do apologise.
I've worn my cardigans for a while, actually, thinking about it.
I mean, do you know, we lay into a cardigan, Rory, right? But the only reason we're laying into the cardigan is because none of us are mad enough to pull it off.
Because we're old.
See, Sid doesn't need to wear a cardigan. His body
I've got one built in.
It's like one built in, yeah.
Knit it. But yes, I'm going to go so far as to say that I think Hegemony is definitely in the running now, given that we're coming towards the end of the year. Definitely running for my game of the year.
Yeah, I'd say it's on my list.
I'm itching to play it again. I've been and ahhing about buying a copy, and I might have to take the plunge soon. I wanted to wait for Black Friday just in case anyone had a deal on it. But I absolutely love that game, and I really want to explore it more.
Mm. The sneaky thing. The issue you have to be careful of is that if you want to play it not with 4 players, but you want the 4-player experience, you need the expansion because it adds some bots that you can sort of automate the other factions if you want to play a full sort of 4-player.
So if
game.
I wanted to only actual 2 players, but automate 4 players, I need the expansion.
Yes.
Okay.
If you want to play 2 players, you have to use like the working class and the capitalist class. You can't play it with like the other 2, for example.
Yeah, no, I know that much, but I didn't know that. But I can play it just working class and the capitalist, or do I have to have the bots? Okay, so that's
no. You can play with just the 2. But if you want to scale it so you have a 4-player experience, I'm pretty sure, because my friend Tom actually in America was thinking of buying it as well, and I had to basically double check, and I'm pretty sure that because I got the Kickstarter of it, I get all of it together. Yeah. So I'm fairly sure the expansion bit of it adds the automation for the other factions.
Good to know.
Yeah, I think you're right as well. Yeah.
Right,
and then there's like there's an additional expansion on top of that, which basically just deck of cards, which I think adds more sort of crises and stuff for the state.
Yeah, there's one that slightly changes the rules to change the settings, so you can play something that's not quite so kind of Western.
Yeah,
alters it slightly. But that's Hegemony. Yeah,
that's Hegemony. I have a funny feeling we might be talking about it in our next episode then as well, by the sounds of it, because we're all rather enamoured with that, aren't we?
Yes, rather goodbye. Right, well, speaking of building societies, that's how you do a segue. I have been playing Terraforming Mars, the Ares Expedition, which is newer, because I think you've played Terribly Boring Farce, haven't you, Steve?
I have indeed, yes.
But I don't think the other 2 have, sadly. You
no. Well, after the fact that you always call it Terribly Boring Farce, why would I go and play it? For some reason, I trust your opinion, Andy, on board games.
And so you should.
So if you're telling me that a game is boring, why would I then go out and play it?
It's not boring. It's
just a terribly boring farce.
It is terribly boring.
You might need to rename it.
I do it lovingly, but I don't think it's as good as people make out. Let's put it that way. It's not bad, but I don't think it's as good as the ratings suggest. Let's put it that way. It has issues. However, with one of the expansions, it is better. Anyway, the Ares Expedition is essentially a kind of a reimagining of Terraforming Mars. So Terraforming Mars is, in its core, a card-based game where you play a card each turn, you buy essentially a building. So it could be, it could be a facility, it could be an event that creates oxygen. So you're growing trees, trying to put water onto the planet Mars, and essentially literally terraform it. And each sort of turn or round is essentially a generation of people. So the idea is it takes, dozens of years for this process to occur. You gain points for producing trees which generate oxygen. You increase the temperature of the planet so that things could live there, and you produce water, obviously, so life can exist, broadly speaking. And then the game ends when all 3 of these sort of meters essentially have been filled. The Ares Expedition is basically the same idea, but they've kind of streamlined it a bit. So instead of the game being turn-based, so one person would play a card or do 2 turns, next player will do 2 things, next player, and so on and so forth. The Ares Expedition is essentially almost a simultaneous game. I will say the production values are a lot better than the base game. It's not hard. I think crayon on a piece of paper would be slightly better than the production values of the base game, but they've got double layer player boards. They're a little bit better organised, so your counters don't go everywhere. It is a little bit simpler. So instead of a whacking great deck of cards, well, there's still a whacking great deck of cards that you in the base game you buy with money that you earn. In this game, you get your cards, but you can sell them for money instead. And money is actually a bit of a premium in the game. So you're broadly doing the same thing, trying to generate oxygen, water, and plants, and temperature, I should say. But you're doing it in a very different way. So each round, you have your standard deck of cards, and you have a sort of deck of action cards of 5 things. And you choose one of the 5 action cards each round to say, I want to build a building. bang, but everyone does it face down, so you don't know who's playing what. And you can only do, so in a bit like Twilight Imperium, where everyone, everyone chooses an action, and in, say, a 6-player game, not all the actions might be chosen. Like in a 4-player game, they are, but in a 6-player game, you might get, no one does warfare or government or whatever. It's a bit like that. So anyone who plays that particular action gets a double benefit, as it were. They get a stronger version of it, and everyone else can do the weaker version. So it's a bit like that, but everyone gets to do it. So everyone could say, if one person chooses to do, say, build a green building, everyone can do it, but the person who chose that particular action, or persons, I should say, because multiple player can do it, then you'll get an extra bit of benefit. You might get a discount or a bonus or whatever it is. And all people do that simultaneously. So in theory, the game is quicker, and I suppose in practice it kind of is, but you only ever play the game at the speed of the slowest player, or the person with the most to do, depending on what's going on, because some actions can take longer. No, I'm quite familiar with Terraforming Mars, so it didn't take me long to do my turn, so I sat basically waiting around for other people most of the time, but that's because I played it before. And it presents some interesting parallels with the base game. So in the base game is a lot longer, to be fair. There's a lot more going on. But whilst the Ares Expedition is more streamlined, in a sense it's simpler to play. It is literally choose an action to do, buy a card, because they've all got cost on, and there's loads and loads of tags. So in the same way that Ark Nova has tags, Terraforming Mars has tags, which is why I call Ark Nova Terraforming Zoos, because it's basically the same idea. You play a card, it's got a bunch of symbols on it. Some cards you play require that you have those symbols beforehand, and so on and so forth. So the idea is basically the same. And that is true for both versions of Terraforming Mars. And I find it both kind of simpler and more streamlined, and yet more faffy. Because having 2 decks of cards is a pain in the ass, quite frankly. Why they couldn't have just had a cube with actions 1 to 5 on the bottom of the player board, because you can't choose the same action twice. So you can just move your cube around to say, I'm doing action 1. The summary cards tell you exactly what the actions do, so you don't need the cards to tell you what to do. So they're duplicating up stuff there. And I just thought it was kind of annoying to have 2 cards. It's a number of times I picked up the wrong deck of cards. It was just irritating. Now they have different
when you say a deck of cards and you're picking up a deck, how many cards are in this deck? Is this like your action deck?
Your action deck is 5 cards in size.
Right, okay.
But your hand of cards that you can play can vary. There's no real limit to it. Maybe 10 cards, I forget, but it can vary depending on what you sell to get money. And things like that. But you've got basically 2 decks of cards in front of you. So you're looking at one deck, trying to choose your next action, and you look at your next deck and trying to manage, do I want to do this action when you're holding 2 decks of cards? It's a pain in the arse, frankly.
Right.
So I just found it a bit faffy. It's a minor complaint, but it's just irritating, and it's something they didn't need to do, I think. And that's kind of the theme for the whole game, I think. There's a bunch of stuff in it that just doesn't need to be there. So whilst the actions and the flow of the game is a lot simpler than Terraforming Mars, I just found it a bit unnecessary. And I don't think it's different and also, it's actually, yes, the central board doesn't need to be there at all. So in the main game, the base game, you've got a map with a bunch of hexes on it that you can choose where to put things like trees and cities and oceans. Yeah. And they're quite strategic. So if you put a city down next to a bunch of trees, you get a lot of points because that city gets a point for every tree around it. So there's a lot of, you can basically rob points from your position. Put oceans down next to other oceans, you get a bonus, and so on and so forth. It doesn't work like this in Ares. It's just literally the board is there to have some ocean tiles. And once an ocean tile is turned over, you get the benefit, and that's it. It just sits there as basically a game timer, because once the oceans are out, that's one of the 3 meters filled. But that and all the only other thing the board does is have the other 3 or the other 2 meters, so the amount of oxygen you produced and the amount of temperature you produced, and that's it. It serves no other purpose. You could have literally just a scale, a little tiny board like this with the 3 little meters on, and just pick up a random ocean tile from a deck or from a pile, because you discard them at the end of the round. Once they're done, you don't use them again. They serve no other purpose. It just seems like there's stuff in the game that looks nice but just doesn't need to be there. So in streamlining the game, they've made it more faffy. It's odd. Again, they're minor complaints. They're just irritations that don't need to be there. I mean, the broad game is basically the same. So my feelings on Terraforming Mars and Terraforming Mars Ares Expedition are broadly the same. And that's the problem. I don't think it needs to exist because it's not different enough from the standard game to own both.
So which one does need to exist? The original
second one.
or the second one?
I prefer the original, weirdly, of the two. There's more to it, and it takes a bit longer, but I think the central board with the strategy of putting cities and plants and things down is just a little bit nicer. Whilst the production quality is bloody awful, I think the original game is just slightly better, although it does take a lot longer. So if you want a quicker game, you play Ares, but if you want a slightly better game, in my opinion, you have the first one. I just don't think they're different enough to warrant owning both. You have one, but not the other.
Okay.
So it's I don't know. It was a funny one. I don't hate it. It was fine.
You've made me hate it.
Yeah, good.
You're just listening to you. That I don't want to be near it. I just feel really bored. I mean, that's a damning admission, isn't it, on a podcast about board gaming? But it doesn't. Yeah. It's not. You're not setting my pants on fire.
Why do you think I call it terribly boring farce? You've basically made my point.
Yeah, but I'm not encouraged to play either of them now.
No. In fact, I feel like I'd avoid them now. That's the thing.
I'd say it's a weird thing. I almost feel as if you need to have at least played Terraforming Mars once, just so you can actually form your own opinion.
So I think
mine and Andy's opinion is quite strong on
I
this.
think I own it.
And we are against the tide on this.
We are.
Terraforming Mars.
Not the physical. I'm sure. You
definitely own the Steam version. Yes, you own the Steam version.
Oh, Sid,
you would have got it in one of the Humble Bundles.
Is that going to be our next board gaming internet night? Should we play terribly boring?
No,
Mars?
because I like our internet night. Yeah, I enjoy those. I don't want to spend it playing shit.
I think for your education, you should definitely. It's like if you're a car buff, at some point in your life, you should own an Alfa Romeo just for the experience of oil pishing all over your drive. You should. It's the same in board games. You should play Terraforming Mars. And Talisman, it might be shit, but you should at least play it so you understand why it's shit.
Are you basically saying we should try it so we know what shit feels like, so that when we play anything else, we'll know what good will just be so much better?
It's not shit. It isn't shit.
See, the problem is, me and Andy's opinion of this is so different to the rest of board gaming that sometimes I do wonder whether we are wrong, if that makes sense.
No, we're not wrong.
It's in the top 100 on board games.
I was about to come to that. Is it in our challenge, Steve?
It's in our potential challenge, yes.
Well.
So you will play it at some point.
Yeah, I'm going to play it next year.
Yeah.
We'll
get on to that next episode as well.
It'd be interesting, actually, because you played Ark Nova, Rory. It'd be interesting to see if you like Terraforming Mars, because it is basically the same game.
Do you know what's also interesting is that I've played Orbital, which is...
that was wank.
But
that was proper shit. That was terrible.
Yeah, but it's the same designer, and essentially it's Terraforming Mars. It's Terraforming Mars Lite.
It is.
It's the game he designed before designing Terraforming Mars. Yeah. So I've played the prequel, and I've played the Zoo spin-off.
Yeah.
But I haven't played Terraforming Mars. Now I'll put it on my list of things to do next year.
So what you've basically played.
I've played
Voyager
around it
and Deep Space Nine, but you haven't played Next Generation, is what you're saying.
Well, hang on, no, you can't call it terribly boring farce and then say it's Next Generation.
It's an insult to the Next Generation.
That is wash your mouth out, Lewis.
Jesus, I'm sorry. What should I say instead?
That's a good half of our listeners now switching off.
I'm pissed off. I think I might drop off.
I might bail out of it, to be honest.
I'm sorry, people. That's an insult to one of my favourite shows.
Right. I think, Andy, however, we do have a game that you will like.
Oh, do tell.
100% you're going to love this game.
You're going to love this. And it's going to involve you swearing constantly when you play it.
Excellent. That's a board game.
Yeah.
So this is the White Castle, which I believe has only just come out, so it's fairly new.
It was hot shit at Essen. I picked it up. I had a little day trip out in Oxford last week. And I went to the Thirsty Meeples. That was lovely. Actually, little side story here. I met up with my friend, Pumar, who was the guy that introduced me to board games back in 2008
Oh,
And so he introduced me. We played Pandemic, the first first printing of it when everything was wooden. Yeah, the next generation. And so I met up with him last week, and we went into Oxford together, and we went to the Thirsty Meeples. And while I was there, I bought myself a copy of The White Castle. And for 28 rips, it is absolutely sublime, this game.
£28.
Yeah.
That is unheard of for a board game these days.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I paid for Pandemic 8 years ago, I think.
Yeah.
At like a UK Games Expo bargain price as well, So, yeah. Go on, Rory. Explain the White Castle.
Tell me about this, because you sent some pictures out and you definitely caught my attention, and I would like to know more.
Is Gary Oldman in it?
No.
There's an oblique reference to the film called The Man in the White Castle. Is it The Man in the White Castle? Something like that. Anyway,
that's The Man in the High Castle.
That's the one.
That's
Close
the Man in
enough.
the High
Carry on.
Castle. Yeah, you could be talking about Harold and Kumar go to White Castle, but that's a real stoner movie.
It's a very different film. Gary Oldman's nowhere near that.
No, he's not. He's near there. No.
So quiet. Go on, carry on.
The White Castle is a dice placement game. It is an extremely tight Euro where you are the clan leader in Japan, and you are going to send your courtiers, not your courtesans, that's something different as well. You're going to send your courtiers, your warriors, and your gardeners out into the land to kind of curry favour with the emperor, so that you can earn your prestige and climb your way up to be really prominent and really powerful in this daimyo society. I don't know anything about this culture, so I'm just kind of saying words that I've read in the rule book. Right? I read over all the business. But essentially, this game lasts, you get 9 turns in this entire game. In your turn, you will pick up a die from one of the 3 bridges. You'll either pick the highest number die or the lowest number die. And depending on its colour or its number, you will place it on one of the action slots on the board. And these change between every game. You will then fire off those actions, and maybe some sub-actions, and maybe some more sub-actions if you've been really clever. And then turn passes to the other player, and they will do something similar, which no doubt will utterly piss in your chips. No matter what they do, it is guaranteed to piss you off. Play continues until you've finished. You've each done this 3 times, and then you have the end of the round where you score some points. You do it again, reset the dice, another 3 turns, score some more points, and then you do it for the 3rd and final time, and you realise that you've not got nearly enough resources, nearly enough points. You need at least 5 more actions, and that somehow you have not made it off the starting point of the score tracker yet. This game, it was brilliant. Steve and I played it. We played it twice, including kind of a bit of a rules walkthrough. Last night? Was it only last night, Steve?
It was last night, yeah.
It was last night.
And I was tempted to set it up for a 3rd game as well.
We could have totally played a 3rd game of this. It is, as I described it, as an espresso Euro. It is everything you want from a Euro in a shot.
Euresso.
We could go for the Euresso. An espresso Euro. This has got big, meaty decisions every step of the way. It's hard to plan ahead because the game state changes so rapidly, even in a 2-player game. You have to pay attention, you have to be thinking, you have to look for those synergies at every moment. It's so easy to make a mistake. You're always going to want one more of this resource, or one more money, or one more action. There was one point where I stepped away from the table to go make a drink and came back and had that horrible realisation that I've already taken my 3rd turn. I'm not going to get another turn. I'm not going to get another go this round. And I'm walking back to the table with these 2 glasses, just going, and I just stopped dead in my tracks, just going, shit. That's it. Shit. I've run out of turns.
It was hilarious because he thought he'd forgotten the turn order and thought he had to go after it. It was brilliant.
No, because the first game, it was Steve went first, and then in the second game, I went first. So I come back, I've got one more turn. I know exactly what. No, I don't. What am I going to do?
Outstanding.
Like Steve and I were effing and jeffing at each other. We called each other some really horrible names last night, every 5 minutes, because everything you did frustrated your opponent.
Yeah, it should be pointed out it's a dice placement game which you're fully aware of. So someone can take the dice you want, someone can take the action space you want. Okay, pretty normal dice placement stuff, yeah?
Yeah.
There are certain actions you can do which change the action spaces.
Oh, hello.
Yeah.
After you've placed your dice?
Yeah. Or before. Yeah.
Or before, because basically there's like a castle, the castle which you can send your courtiers into, right? And when your courtier moves into one of these action spaces, you take off the card, which is all the worker play dice placement action spaces for that, and put it on your board and draw a new one. So you could be saying, right, I'm planning to do the soldier action, right? Plan to do the soldier action. Okay, so Rory hasn't gone to the soldier action. That's fine. It's still clear. It's orange. There's an orange 5. I can get in there. It's fine. Rory then moves one of his courtiers in and moves that action off onto the board and pulls a completely different action off the deck. And it's just like, okay, my entire plan has just fallen completely out of the bottom of it like a soggy, wet brown bag.
Right, I'm buying this game.
Yeah.
Is it just 2-player then?
No, goes up to 4.
Oh God, that's just going to be a swearathon.
Well, this is where it gets interesting. There's an extra mechanic we didn't see because it's not available in the 2-player game. So it's dice placement, and one of the things is you don't have to match the face exactly. So if the space has got a 5 on it, you can put any dice you want on that space. But if it's 5, you don't pay anything.
Right.
If it's anything less than that, you pay to basically bring the value up. So if you put a 3 down, you have to pay 2 money to turn it into a 5. Put a 6 down, you get paid 2 money.
1 money.
1 money, so you get paid 1 money. However, in a 3 and 4 player game, people can place their dice on top of that dice.
Oh.
And it's the new dice which sets the value of that action space now.
Yeah, so if I went to that 5 space using a 3, I'd have to pay 2 to pip it up to a 5.
But I could
But
come
then
through and play a
you
three.
can now put a 3 on top of it and you get that action.
Wow.
Oh,
Hello.
boys.
So you've been looking around the room going, right, who's got a 3? Oh, nobody. Right, that's a 3. I'll pay the 2 just to see everyone cry.
Yeah.
I'm all over this.
Is this why we put Terraforming Mars in the middle of this conversation?
Oh, yeah, this is a shit sandwich.
Because is this how I feel afterwards when simply? Because this sounds amazing. This is the kind of thing I want.
And
to
this
be
is. I mean, we've told you a good chunk of the good stuff about this. The other good thing is like the game changes so much between games because all of these spaces in the castle. So they've got 3 levels, 3 cards on the first level, 2 cards on the second level, and 1 card on the top. And these cards change every game, and they change throughout the game. But the spots where you go, so on like you actually dictate what colour they're going to be. The little chits, the orange, black and white chits that you randomly assign. So in level 2, in your first game might be a black dice, a white dice for one section, and then for the other room it might be an orange and a white. But those colours will completely change for the next game. Also, some of the bonuses for taking your samurai off to the training yards, those change. In our first game, they were a bit naff. In our second game, they were really important. The way the resources, you need steel, rice, and mother of pearl. Mother of pearl. And in one game, it was quite
to like
straightforward.
decorate the bathrooms to make sure that they're all
exactly.
Nice.
In one game, getting hold of rice was quite straightforward, but in the second game, getting hold of rice was an absolute nightmare for the first half.
I can see why you played it twice, because it's gonna make you want more, and I can play it differently. You
want to see the different, and also it's one of those things where it's a Euro game, so you play it once, you think, oh, I've got this, and we did this twice this weekend, right? It's 2 Euro games. We're not going to mention it today. We also played Gollum earlier in the week, and we did this. We played that one after another, and both times we did exactly the same thing. Right, we learnt it. That was the first go. We understand what's going on now.
Got it.
Play again. Yeah, we've got it. We know what we're doing. The second time we played, our score was half of what it was the first time we played.
Yeah.
What's the playtime like on it then? Because if you manage to get 2 games in, is it going pretty quick, or is it just that you had a lot of time?
First time we probably did it in maybe an hour, maybe 70 minutes. But that was with the setup took us a little while because, you're following the rule book to how to do the setup, which actually, second time I was like, it's a piece of piss because I know what I'm doing now. And then we had to go through the rules. Just what does this mean? How can we go here? Does this? The second time we played, we did it in less than 40 minutes.
Okay.
And it's not the game which sets the pace here. It's the analysis paralysis. It's that moment where you can't plan ahead because the game state will have changed that much. And that's really this game's detriment, but also one of its pluses. Because, you know, the amount of times I said Rory planned ahead, I did something and he swore at me because I'd taken not only the dice he wanted, the action space he wanted, but changed another action space in the process, which completely screwed up his plan. But that does mean that there is that thinking time on every single round. You can't think during someone else. You can try and think during someone else's round, but generally what you want will have changed by the time it comes back to you.
You are always reacting in this game.
Right. So you've got a broad overall objective, but the specifics will change from turn to turn.
Yeah, it's little things like, I want to get a gardener down because the gardeners are really important. They're good points and they're good bonuses. How I do that could change significantly. There might only be to start in turn one. There might only be one option to do that, which is fine. So if Steve takes that, it's then really scuppers my plan. But then he could do something which potentially introduces a new way of doing it that might be cheaper, might be more expensive.
This is going to be a real Marmite game, isn't it? Because there's going to be folk that's going to drive up the wall.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not one of those folk. I want to play.
Let's play it. Yeah.
And I think if you are the type of person that if you are particularly prone to analysis paralysis, this game is going to be quite daunting for you. And I think it's then going to be potentially a cause of frustration for people that play with you because everyone's going to be suffering from it. But I think if you are prone to it, you will suffer from it. And there were times where like, hang on, Steve, I need to just, I think it was an indication of how complicated, how details was. Steve and I were both stood up, and I think Steve's commented before.
Wow.
The proof that my brains are in my arse is that I have to stand up to think to wear them out. And that's been the case for years. But the fact that Steve was standing up as well.
What, play by the seat of your pants, Tudor. Standing up, good lord.
Standing up, leaning over the table, we're both doing because obviously you don't want to say anything out loud, but you can't. It's really interesting. You do that, the White Castle mumble, because you can't possibly keep that story in your head. You need to say the mother pearl. Okay, go. Right.
Steve, why have you done that?
Yes.
One worse, like last night I was playing. I was like, I've got to do this. Right, so I'm going to take this dice really confidently, just plonked it down, and Steve went, "Oh, you bastard." And then in my next turn, I went, "Oh, Rory, you bastard. I took my own action. I got in my own way."
Dickhead.
Yeah, it was a prize. I was like, why did I do that? Why? I got in my own way. Yeah. Fascinating game. Steve and I think we barely scratched the surface of it. An indicator of that, say, the first game with I think I managed to get up to 35 points in the first game, but less than 20 in the second. And then this Heron track. And it's we barely moved on that. There's so much in this game that we haven't explored. And I want to play more of it. And I want to play it more. And I think it's great at 2 players. I really, really enjoyed it at 2. I can't wait to play it at 3. It's going to be utterly cutthroat. I think it's it's the type of thing that, friends could fall out with playing this game.
That sounds remarkably reminiscent of. Do you remember Donning the Purple, Steve?
Oh, I do indeed.
That was a brilliant game. We should play that again, actually. I've not played that in a long time. But that sounds the similar kind of thing that you're going to fall out with people because, the only way to win that game is to basically be a git.
But yeah, that's...
No, I was randomly, rabbit hole you just said, I actually went and looked to see what the designer of that had done next because I suddenly thought,
Petter.
If he'd done such a belt as that, but it was a solo game is the next one he's done, which would actually just come out this year, which looks interesting, but it's a solo game, so my interest is not peaked very high on it.
Interesting you should say that. I'm just going to throw this in as a teaser for the future. Speaking of solo games, Alora and I played, solo game, we both played, Box 1 from Neil Patrick Harris. We started playing that last night.
Well,
I'm not going to tell you any more about it.
There's a White Castle segue. That's really brilliant.
I know. That's twice I've done banging segues this evening. But yes, we started playing that last night, which is intended as a solo experience, but you can play it with two. I wouldn't recommend any more than that, but if, as a couple, or just on a solo game, which is an interesting game. It's kind of a sort of escape room type of sort of thing, but there's a lot more thinking involved. So there's puzzles and logical thinking and questions and the sort of tracking of information, and there's a few sort of twists and turns, but that's all I'm going to say, because obviously I can't say too much in case anyone wants to play it, because it'll just give everything away. So we started playing that last night. We're not finished it yet. We're about, I don't know how far we are through it. We are part way through it, and we are quite enjoying it so far.
I'm interested to hear more about that. But yeah, that for me, it sums up the White Castle from De Vere. I picked it up from a bricks and mortar shop for 28 quid. If that sounds interesting, it is punt territory money. This, and the component qualities of it is great. I mean, it's De Vere, they do great stuff. The art's fantastic, but the gameplay is incredible.
Looking online just now, I can't find it for less than about 30 quid. From online, for like places like Firestone Games and stuff, who are usually pretty good. 30 quid, 29.75, stuff like that. That's as cheap as I can get it. So you got a steal there from a bricks and mortar shop there, mate.
Brilliant. But worth the trip to Oxford as well. Playing the
that might add a little bit to the price, but Thirsty Meeples is a good store.
You paid 10 quid for parking that day.
So it's paid 40 quid for it. Okay.
You do the park and ride, Steve. Did park and ride? It's only £2.40.
So going back to the middle class thing, it used to be you could pay for parking in the centre, John Lewis, but it used to be free electric charging.
Ooh.
Oh,
so we used to take Amanda's electric car, and you go there and basically it's effectively paid for your fuel. Unfortunately, that was pre the energy crisis. That was, and then we went there last time. It's like it's you got to pay for it, and you got to pay the normal kind of premium rates for it. And, okay, we'll get a park and ride next time.
I don't mind a park and ride actually. I think it's pretty good.
The Oxford one's really good, especially from our direction.
Although, as I discovered, it's only like a 30-minute walk from the. I went to I went to Seacourt. I went to the Seacourt Park. Really boring now. I went to the Seacourt Park and ride, and then because the bus on the way back was quite late, we were late getting back to the bus stop, so we just it's only a 25-minute walk.
That's not so bad. York, that's where we went. It was York. That was worth doing because you get park and ride there, and you can have a couple of beers. Well, some of you can. One of you can't. So never mind. Sure, Pandy. But yeah, that's worth doing because obviously you can go to Travelling Man as well. And the Railway Museum, which is excellent.
It is very good, the Railway Museum. And the House of Trembling
We're
Madness.
such geeks. The Railway Museum, I strongly recommend it. I've had a
of a
great
certain age
it's
as well.
really good. It's really, really
It is
good.
very, very good. The Railway Museum in York is belting.
There's so many signs to read, it pisses Sue off no end. Because you have to stop and read them.
You do, it's interesting. And there's Mrs. Miggin's Pie Shop on the corner on the way there, just around the corner from Travelling Man, with gravy all over. It's brilliant. Or the Yorkshire Pudding Shop, that's fantastic. Massive great Yorkshire pudding the size of a hubcap, full of mashed potato and sausage and gravy. It's brilliant. It's not good for you, but it's belting. York is worth going to. If you're up north, York is worth going to for many reasons.
Well, gentlemen, following that shit sandwich,
it's now time for dessert.
it's now time for a
fancy
pudding.
sweet.
Yeah.
A mince
And
pie with hazelnut topping.
We've spoken about Yorkshire puddings, which will confuse most of the non-British audience, given that pudding means so many weird things elsewhere.
I want pudding now.
Puddings. Now, stop it. Right, I've got some questions. Got some questions in the mailbag. No quickfire round this week. But there is a good one here. There is a good one here from Whose Turn Is It Anyway podcast. And they ask, and there's a bit of story with this one, actually. The question is, and then I'll tell the story so you guys can think about the answer. What has been your biggest board gaming accident that you've had since your group has been together? And the story that comes with this one is their main one was they were at a board game convention in the southwest in Devon. After dinner, they'd all had a few fizzy pops, and all were in good spirits.
Smashed.
I'm not reading between the lines.
I am.
It was decided that Dune Imperium should be played, along with plenty of rums. The game resulted...
Spiced rums.
Spiced rums. Oh, yes, that's good. The game resulted in genius combo turns and also forgetting that we have agents to place. Inevitably, the spiced rum was knocked all over the Imperium row, and the board, the offender, had declared that JP, the owner of the game, wins by default.
Fair.
So, have we got any rival stories?
We've got a very similar story.
Yeah, my cursed copy of Game of Thrones.
Indeed, yes. It's one of the earliest times I think when I went to play with the Worcester, because you were still around, weren't you, Steve? You sort of introduced me to the Worcester crew. We ended up playing Game of Thrones, and I'm led to believe it's a good game. I don't think we got to finish it. I can't remember. And again, we'd all had a few adult lemonades. And as a few of you who know me know, sometimes I get excited and enthusiastic. I can gesticulate somewhat. And I gesticulated quite hard in the general direction of my own beer, which inevitably fell all over the board. And the board for this game is not small. But then again, neither is a full pint. So there was quite a lot of absorption, a lot of panicking. Everyone scattered from the table as soon as this happened, like, you know, when cockroaches, when the lights come on, everyone, because you don't want to get beer all over your legs. But then we suddenly realised, shit, all the cards! Scooping them all up, drying them all off, so they all don't poof up. Unfortunately, the board was sacrificed to the great gaming gods, and I felt absolutely lousy. And I was like, no, Steve, I'll buy you a new board, I'll buy you a new game, it's my fault, it's fine. And what didn't tell me all the way home is that he has a spare board and he let me stew for 45 minutes.
So what had happened was the original, I got a very first printing of the second edition of Game of Thrones, and the board had not been cut properly. So, the boards fold up. It meant that, because it's an 8-panel board, it's quite large, it meant that it didn't quite fold back properly, so if you put too much pressure on it, you'd actually rip it. So they did a product recall, and you didn't have to send them back. You just say, I've got a copy. Here. Actually, it's one of the few things I think you actually needed that FFG proof of purchase token for. And they sent out a new board. So I actually had another board in plastic at the bottom of the box that I told Andy I had.
Bastard.
Which actually folded properly as well.
Yeah,
so did you a favour, is what you're saying.
Well, the thing is, I was told that the other one didn't fold properly, but I didn't really notice a problem with it, so I always had just a spare board. And it's a good job I did, because it got covered in beer.
There are words for people like you, Mr. Tudor, and none of them are pleasant.
So yes, the only board gaming accident I've ever had, and it's one that I continue to make, is to let my small children play with board games, to the point where a number of components have just disappeared from various games. Like I got Dinosaur Island, the Kickstarter edition, with all the bright pink plastic dinosaurs. I've actually got, and some board games, you take the lid off and there's a post-it note listing all the things that are missing. Because they're like stuck inside the sofa in such a way that the only way to get them is to kind of take a Stanley knife to it, or they've gone up a vacuum cleaner and a long gone, or a dog's eaten them. I remember telling Steve once, we were talking about 2-player games that we could play on our Monday nights, and I mentioned I've got Space Hulk 3rd edition, which, with the really tasty miniatures that you can't buy anymore. And I mentioned that I've got it all, but some of the figures might be a little bit mangled because Logan just does that with them. and Steve went a bit pale when he learned that I let a 5-year-old do that with Space Hulk 3rd edition miniatures.
I'm getting cold sweats just hearing about it.
I've got a really random one.
Oh yeah.
So Charterstone, and this is not going to go the way you think it does. It's a bit of a spoiler, but one of the boxes you unlock in Charterstone, because it's a legacy game, is a candle.
Oh yes, yes it is. Yes.
And you light the candle, and the light in the candle has a game effect whether the candle stays lit or goes out. Nothing caught fire. You'd be happy to know.
Good.
And it's actually a little tea light, so it's like that little very thin metal case with the wax inside. Yeah. You also know that I've got a Geek and Sun table, which I paid for a custom vinyl Polyhedron Collider logo on one side, and they got the felt on the other side. Well, what I didn't know is when we packed away Charterstone, that candle fell between the board and the table. On its own, that's not a problem. However, somehow, and I still don't know how it happened, it worked itself almost halfway between and got crushed and left the tiniest of pokey bits up. So if you now look at the vinyl polyhedron collider side, there's the tiniest of little tears where this candle has torn through the vinyl.
Oh my goodness.
And it's really annoying because it's like I lifted it up to do something and went, how the hell did that get all the way in there? Oh, you bastard.
Ouch.
So, yeah. Thankfully, nothing caught fire, though, because that was what
That would have been
we were
worse.
worried that was going to happen with Charterstone and a candle. Yes. A candle and lots of cardboard seems an odd combination to me.
Well, you didn't add any booze to it, so you're probably safe.
No rum, you're okay.
True.
I think my biggest accident is I played Scout once. That was a fucking disaster.
Again, we're going against the run of play there. At least all four of us are of the same opinion on this one.
That's a bullet I'm not going to take.
No, don't.
I'm not.
Honestly.
I'm not. People have offered me Scout. I'm like, no, not doing it.
Shite. It is shite. I don't get it. Anyway, moving on. Dave, I'm assuming this is former Spiky. It's a man called Dave. There's a few of them. So if you're Dave and you've written in asking this question, thank you. In-person RPGing. We used to do that, I think.
It's a thing. I remember
It's
it
a
once.
thing.
In the
We've
before
been able
times.
to play again for a while, thanks to the unspecific virus of unknown origin disappearing, or at least becoming less serious. But do you actually want to? Now you've been spoiled by things like Roll20 and Foundry and things like that. And that's an excellent question, because I find the sort of virtual tabletops to be particularly good, because you can do funky things with them. There's also the magical effects. You can, if you're Rory and you've got time and skills, then you can make fantastic, effects and things
Or
pop up
macros,
when you
I
scroll.
love it.
Exactly. You can do all of those things, which you can't do in real life. Thought of, throwing glitter or actual fire at your players, which I believe is frowned upon and considered dangerous. I don't know. I mean, we could. I mean, I'm running Curse of Strahd at the moment, as we talked about last time, and I don't want to. I don't want to meet in person. Not other than my loathing of other human beings, but because you've got this sort of wonderful package that's you've got all the pre-prepared tokens and the structure of the game and all the maps, so you can see what's going on. Because one thing I find when you're playing live is that everyone concentrates on the thing in the middle of the table rather than listening to the DM, which is why I try not to have live maps when I'm doing live RPGs. It's a bit more abstracted, a bit more like Alien or
But here's the thing.
Coriolis.
It's not mutually exclusive. You could have a VTT and play in real life.
You could.
I would like, actually, as a side segue to this, those kind of flat tables with the tellies under them, you could change the maps. I want one of them. I want one of them.
Exactly that.
I'd have one.
And all that's doing is replacing the big sheet of gridded paper.
That's true.
Right?
So you could have Sirenscape belting out
here's
as
the
well.
thing.
And that's another thing, yeah.
Here's the thing. I've thought about this, right?
Oh, Sid. Oh, no.
Now, you see, this exactly...
I'm
right,
gonna spend money now.
I'm going to say more here, right? Because I don't want to play my regular games in person. Right? So our Wednesday night game, I don't want to play in person.
The commute does eat into the time as
Simply
well.
because of the commute. And it's too much of a demand on... It's good gaming time wasted in a car, right?
Yeah.
Can't be arsed with that. That's not going to work. However, as a ceremonial event, now...
As a one-off, yeah.
A one-off, periodically, 8 or 9 hours, with a few tinnies, right? Now, VTT in the middle. Adult lemonade. Put a little TV in the middle, VTT running on it. Now we're talking.
That's a notch cranker right there.
See, my issue here is not the VTT versus the table. My issue is my brain has time slotted things now. In that, if we're going to meet up, I'm going to play a board game.
Yeah.
And this is what we've done, and this is what we do. Now, of course, some listeners will be aware, me and Rory live about half an hour from each other, but the rest of us live an hour from each other. So as you said, playing an RPG on an evening is not a good thing because that means 3 or 4 of us have got to spend 2 hours driving back and forth.
Yeah.
When you've only got like that, these only leaves you like 2 hours, 3 hours tops to play.
No
so what tends to happen is well, that means we tend to play board games. Most of us play board games at a weekend together because we block out the entire day. Don't we say, right, okay, we get to each other's about 10 o'clock, we leave 4 or 5 o'clock kind of thing. So we do that. And I know that if I'm going to play a RPG, it means I'm not going to play any board games for that month kind of thing. And it's just that time slotting thing that as a one-off thing, I'd rather play a board game because I know that an RPG will never fit into that slot. You know, there's very few RPGs we play which you can do in one session, isn't it? I mean, I'd love to play RPGs again in person, but the problem is time is my enemy here.
I think this is a compromised position, isn't it? This is about being able to play the RPG without the weight of the commute of getting everybody in the same room. Because it's not like, it's not going to be an hour. You want 3 or 4 hours to play in person. You're going to make it worthwhile. And I can see where you're going with that, Steve. Yeah.
I'd be interested to know if we played in person, how quickly things would go. Because I think one of the issues with playing on the VTT is you've got the VTT faffiness sometimes, like opening menus and opening windows. When I wonder if people have got the character sheet in front of them and you're more focused because you're at the same place, whether things will actually go quicker and you'll get more into the time.
There is that, but then does the VTT also automates an awful lot? You know, you just click a button, you click longsword, and it does all your modifiers for you. Yeah, you don't have to do any arithmetic.
Manages
deals with
arrows,
Pathfinder, for example.
Your spell slots and your money as well. You don't have to keep rubbing things out and crossing it out and writing it around again, and your hit points, all that sort of stuff. So a lot of the admin's done for you, or at least made easier, so you don't have to sort of wear through the paper.
There are games like what Rory played with 10 Candles.
Yeah.
Or Alice is Missing, and all those things, which work better, I would argue, in person.
You'd have to play some of those. You'd have to play around the table. See, I've had a bit of a backwards introduction, I think, from the classical RPG route, because I started with you guys playing on Roll20, and it wasn't until last year that I actually sat at a table and played a physical game with people. So I was always exposed to Roll20, and I love it, and the VTT, but actually having to sit around a table and roll dice with a character sheet in front of me and interacting with people, I absolutely loved that experience. I absolutely loved it, and it forced me, I think, as Andy mentioned, I really got, as a dungeon master, I got really into creating the macros and all the buttons, and I love designing the maps as well. I'd actually spend up a lot of time doing that. When I got to the table, I couldn't do that, so I was using theatre of the mind. I had to switch as a DM to doing a completely different style of RPG, games mastering, which I found so much more enriching and so much more enjoyable, rather than being stuck with the map that I'd pre-prepared and the tokens and all those.
What Theatre of the Mind does for me is it takes away the rigidity of the battle map. The tactical battle map can get in the bin.
Yeah.
And suddenly the game will flow nicer, and people won't worry about whether there's, I can't be doing that because I'm stood there. It's kind of like, hey, it's all right, just play play and move it going.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think that depends on the game, personally.
Yeah, it does, really
because
does.
I think if you're playing a D&D-based game, you need a tactical battle map because that's what it's designed to do. Everything is based on ranges.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. The games I've played haven't been D&D. I've been a lot more abstract than the ones that I've played around a table.
Yeah, play Blades in the Dark around the table. You don't need anything in front of you.
It's very
you
true.
just need your dice and your character sheet.
Yep,
so,
and a very active imagination.
Yes.
It's true.
Yeah. I love playing around the table, and I would prefer to play around the table than I would on a VTT. But there, obviously, I understand there are massive time constraints. I would be interested, Steve, if we can find any decent 2-player. I've wanted to play Dread for a while. I know that's a 2-player RPG that we could.
Is it?
I'm sure Dread is a 2.
Well, any RPG can be a 2-player.
True, but I think Dread was designed as a 2-player RPG. That's the one with the Jenga tower.
Oh, yeah.
Ah, okay. Also, it would give me an excuse live to use the 3 sets of whacking great metal dice I've got, because currently they're languishing in a bag.
Don't worry, what I was saying is
we've got stacks of them here.
Me and Sid have been buying Modiphius games, and every time we buy Modiphius games, we buy the set of dice to go with them, and we don't play them. So I've got loads of Modiphius themed dice. I've got Dune dice, I've got Fallout dice, I've got
Alien dice lying
dice.
around. I've got
hundreds of
Blade
Alien
Runner
dice.
I've got all sorts of dice that sit in the blister pack.
I've got the Forbidden Lands box set, which includes a map and stickers.
Likewise, yes.
I think I've got that floating around as well. I want to play that again, actually. I'd like to play that
because
again.
of the map and the stickers. I think that's one I would like to play in person.
Yeah. Actually, some of my former Forbidden Lands crew are itching to play it again, so we might have to combine our with our powers combined, we could be Forbidden Lands.
Well, Steve did a cameo in our game, didn't he?
He did.
There was 1 week of Steve popping up as a door kicker.
Yeah.
Kept the game flowing.
That's right, he did. It was rather fun.
But yes, anyway,
boys,
so there we go.
I think that's it for the week. I think.
I think that's
What do you
plenty.
think?
Yeah, I think so.
I think that's plenty.
Yes.
We've talked about some top games today. We've had a good shit sandwich.
Yeah.
A couple of questions. So, thank you very much for listening, listeners. We have been Polyhedron Collider. If you enjoyed it, please give us a review on podcast, on iTunes or your podcast platform of choice. Also, any kind of engagement really helps us with algorithms and that kind of stuff. We're also available on Facebook, X, Board Game Geek Guild 2726. Just look for Polyhedron Collider. And we are now approaching Christmas. I know, much to Sid's dismay, which means our next episode is going to be our best games of the year, and the one after that is going to be our preview of 2024. So, dear listener, if you have any games you think if you have one game that stood out to you, let us know. We'd love to hear what games you loved and what games you're looking forward to. Until then, happy gaming.
Ta-ra.
Cheerio.
Bye-bye.